He'd covered the bathroom in sticky notes that all said the same word. Mine. My head pounds. Blood trickles down my face, seeping warmth, staining me. "Quinn?" a voice whispers. "Babe?" I blink rapidly. There's a man leaning over me with dark eyes, lips curled in amusement. He is in his early to mid-20s, tall, with thick dark hair falling into his eyes. I notice small details. His clothes are stained, a white shirt and pants clinging to filthy skin. I know who he is immediately, or at least I know traces of who he is. He's my husband, Freddie. Violent flashes slam into me, blurring into a memory. We were playing. He was chasing me around the house, and I was an idiot and tripped down the stairs. I prod at my temple again, wincing. I remember our wedding, his sunshine smile. This man looks like a completely different person. For a disorienting moment, I think he's going to stamp on my head. Freddie slowly lifts his worn Converse, then backs off when I manage to sit up. He drops down beside me. I pretend I don't notice his hand slipping into my jeans pockets. Freddie reaches out and cradles my face. I notice his hands trembling, fingers grazing my eye, prodding harshly. Then his grip on my chin tightens, his nails digging in, like he wants to hurt me. But that wasn't the worst part. "You fell," Freddie tells me dryly, jerking my head towards him. "Babe." I can see the slight twitch in his lip. He tries to hide it, tries to play and perform the role of the perfect husband. But I'm not stupid. I drag myself to the kitchen, searching for a glass. There are no glasses, only a plastic cup that says, "Happy Birthday." I shake away the sudden feeling of unease, filling the party cup with water. Freddie stands behind me, arms folded. He fashions his lips into a grin. "You okay, babe?" "Yeah." I drain the glass. "Why do we only have plastic cups?" Freddie cocks his head. "What do you mean, babe?" He says babe like a question mark. Something slimy fills my throat, like he's tired of saying it. Freddie grabs the first aid kit. I tell him to be gentle in treating my head wound. He smiles that performative smile once again and says, "Of course I will, babe." Freddie is not gentle. Instead, he pokes at the wound with a cotton bud until I snatch it away from him. His clammy fingers pretend to pull my hair into a gentle ponytail, deliberately stabbing at sore spots. I open up the cupboards. "We have no knives," I say, picking up a plastic fork. "Why is all our silverware plastic?" Freddie doesn't respond. I turn to find him staring down at his phone. "Who are you talking to?" Freddie's head snaps up, and I see real fright bleed into his eyes. His bottom lip trembles, and he falls to his knees in front of me, head bowed. When I don't move, paralyzed, he slowly lifts his head. Freddie blinks, then he swipes his eyes. "Nobody," he whispers, quickly adding, "Babe." Everything he says sounds like a question. He doesn't speak for the rest of the day. Freddie makes my dinner while I explore a home I don't fully remember. The front door is locked, so is the kitchen sliding door. On the floor in the lounge is a dog collar attached to a chain. I stumble back. Every window has been melded shut. In the bathroom, sticky notes cover the walls bearing one word: mine. I am trapped with a stranger, and the danger is closing in. "Quinn!" Freddie calls from downstairs. "Dinner is ready." He hesitates. "Babe!" Reality hits me when I walk into the kitchen and he reveals pasta and wine that I know he has drugged. poisoned. He's staring at his phone for the whole meal, not eating, not even typing, just staring. Freddie goes to bed without saying goodnight. He doesn't question why I stand, paralyzed, trying to choke out words suffocating me. He leaves his phone on the table, and, after sitting in silence, wondering why I'm not poisoned, I snatch it up. No texts, no notifications. There is not even a signal. Tapping on text messages to a Hannah, my hands shake. Hannah, I thought about you last night. Miss you. It's okay, sweetie. I'll kill the jerk. Every text is highlighted red, not delivered. I find Freddie in our room on his knees. He's rifling through our wardrobe, ripping apart my clothes. What are you doing? I demand. He doesn't turn around. Where is it, Quinn? He grabs a pair of my jeans, pulling out the pockets. Where's what? I hold up his phone. You've been talking to another girl. I can't stop myself from breaking apart, sobs racking my chest. Haven't you? He stops suddenly, one of my shirts slipping through his fingers. Yes, he whispers, his shoulders slumping. Hannah, my girlfriend. Freddie stands up and comes nose to nose with me. Hannah, he says again, his voice breaking. Who you locked in your basement and won't let go until I... He swallows, his words bleeding agony. Be your husband. He drops to his knees, his head falling into his lap. He splutters on a sob. Who you keep locked up in that collar to torture me. Who you hurt when I refused to obey you. You destroyed my phone. You locked all the doors and windows so I could be all yours. You replaced the silverware. You said you'd hurt us when I don't call you babe. His wide eyes find mine when he lifts his head. Another flash hits me. I'm running, but not away from someone. I'm the one chasing. Freddie's figure staggers ahead of me. I remember. A smile creeps onto my lips, and I step toward him, wrapping my arms around him. I bury my head into his shoulder. He's mine. Up next. I spent my life learning how to resurrect the dead. The government just offered me $70 million to turn that skill into a weapon. Watching TV shows, movies, and reading books that were about science definitely had a part in it, but none had more impact than Jurassic Park did. It wasn't the dinosaurs in the film that piqued my interest, but more the fact that they were brought back from extinction, reviving something from the dead that no longer existed, much like Frankenstein's monster, but without using random body parts that a deformed assistant would dig up from the local cemetery. When I graduated from college, I received my master's degree in genetics, and I received a huge grant along with it. I already knew what I was going to use the money for. While I was in college, scientists brought back an extinct species of wolf called dire wolves. They were created from using a gray wolf's genome that was altered through CRISPR technology that they could edit along with a dire wolf tooth and a dire wolf ear bone for DNA. It was inspiring to think that a species of wolves gone extinct over 13,000 years ago was brought back from extinction in the modern day, and I was going to be the next genius to do so. But things were about to get much more complicated. Tasmanian tigers died off in the year 1936 due to two reasons. The first reason was overhunting. The government of Tasmania allowed for bounty hunters to hunt Tasmanian tigers that were killing their livestock and took it too far. The second reason is because of habitat destruction. Bringing back this species wouldn't just help the ecosystem of Tasmania, but would also open up more opportunities for what could be revived next. With my grant money, I bought and repaired an old lab that hadn't been in use since the 1970s. I then hired trusted co-workers Mike, Jesse, and Chris, whom I met in college, to help me on this long and prosperous journey. We acquired Tasmanian tiger bones from a museum overseas and DNA samples from a Tasmanian devil and a numbat. They were the closest matches that were compatible with the Tasmanian tiger. It took 2 years before we got the fruit of our work, but the Tasmanian tiger was brought back from the dead. My team and I cheered as 3 Tasmanian tiger cubs were born from an artificial womb. Showing the world our success, we would win a Nobel Prize and gain fame and fortune. Soon after, a government officer named Benson approached me. He admired what my team and I had done and presented an opportunity. He explained that the Army was looking for new weapons they could use to win wars when they heard the news that the Tasmanian tiger had been de-extincted. They came to us. The officer offered us a commission of sorts. In exchange for $50 million, we would have to bring back an animal of their choosing. I had a lot of questions I needed to ask. What were they thinking of bringing back? Why me and my team? How would this win wars? Before I could ask, Officer Benson pulled out his phone and showed a picture of a large tusk. We want you to bring back a saber-toothed tiger. Why a saber-toothed tiger? I was surprised. The way he was talking before made it sound like he wanted us to bring back a T-Rex. Studies show that the saber-toothed tigers were the most powerful and dangerous of the feline family. While their speed was nothing to write home about, their stealth ability and grappling strength were unmatched, as well as their robust build, he laughed. Besides, like modern large cats, they can be trained at a young age. So now, if this works, then we'll talk about some good old dinosaurs. If we succeeded, we'd be rich, but the risks were terrifying. Well, I would need better equipment, a larger team, and a facility, I replied. Done, done, and done. What else? I looked closer at the image. Where and when was this tusk excavated? I asked, as Officer Benson put his phone away. A few days ago, in Greenland. If you agree, we can have it for you by next week, Benson said. I paused for a few minutes to think. Make it 70 million, and I'll accept, I said. The officer smiled. Perfect, he said, as he got up and shook my hand. By next week, Officer Benson kept good on his end of the deal. Along with a new facility, my team grew by 100 new scientists and security guards. I was stunned. I never thought I would be in a life where I was resurrecting dead animals as weapons for the military. But here I am. I entered a large room where the saber-toothed tusk was held. It was being studied by some of the new workers, while my old co-workers wrote down notes. Hey, Stan, can I talk to you for a sec? I looked over to see Mike with a concerned look on his face. Yeah, what's up? I asked. There seems to be traces of an unknown compound within the tusk. I'm not sure we should be replicating its DNA until we know what it is. I stopped and turned to him. An unknown substance? Are you sure it's not some dry blood? They were hunting machines, after all. I walked off, leaving the room as Mike followed me. We ran a few tests, but haven't figured out what it is yet. I think we should postpone tests on the tusk until then. I sighed, but agreed. I understand. Science takes time. But in the meantime, I gotta ask, what kind of cat did we get? A lion? A tiger? A leopard? I asked. Well, actually, sir, we were given a liger. The military stated that a liger's genetic code would be most compatible with a saber-toothed tiger. Mike led me to the den where we were keeping the animal. Splendid! Have we determined how long it would take to alter the genomes of the liger so we can edit the saber-tooth DNA from the tusk? I asked. Yes, it will take about 7 to 8 months, Mike replied. Wow, that soon? Who knows how long it would have taken with our old lab? I guess that just leaves researching what the substance on the tusk is. Let's get to it, I shouted for everyone to hear, and I was responded to with a, "Yes, sir." 2 months had gone by, and we had discovered the substance was an unknown bacterium that was all over the tusk. We were stumped. I didn't know what to do, but I turned to Benson. "Officer Benson," he raised his hand. "Please, just Benson will do," he insisted. "Well, sir, my team is stuck on an important detail about the saber-toothed tusk you provided. There seems to be bacteria all over the tusk that we've never seen before, and we don't know how to approach this." I showed Benson what we recorded, but he just put the clipboard down on his desk. "Stan, it's just some bacteria. When my men discovered that tusk, it was 30 feet in the ground. It's probably just frost from it being buried underneath snow for more than 10,000 years. There's nothing to worry about." I picked the clipboard back up. "Even so, it's still odd that the bacteria are unrecognizable." He walked up to me and put his hand on my shoulder. "Listen, the military needs this tiger as soon as possible. If you can't do it, I guess we'll just have to find another genius who can, since it's too much to handle for you." He frowned as I looked bewildered. "I never said it. I couldn't do it. Just that, Stanley, can you bring this animal back to life or not? This is important for America's future," he interrupted. I rolled my eyes and sighed. Fine. I'll just find a way to work around it." You won't believe the horror that happened next. I had headed back to my lab, going on my computer and ignoring the warning of the bacteria, wondering to myself, was I doing the right thing? After 7 months, the world's first de-extinct saber-toothed tiger cub was born. Her name was Phoenix. She weighed 1.75 pounds at birth, a little underweight, but besides that, she was healthy. I informed Benson that the project was a success, but asked for a few weeks before handing her off to the military. She was just born after. He reluctantly agreed. However, the coming weeks of monitoring her would be quite bizarre. The first 2 weeks were fine. Because of the area the tusk was found in, we made an early spring setting in her den. The scientists would play with her, feed her, and give her milk. The next week she had gotten bigger, too big for a 3-week-old cub. Could genetically altering her DNA result in growth acceleration? By 7 weeks, she was a full-grown adult. It was both incredible and concerning in a scientific way. However, that wasn't the strange part. At 5 weeks old, Phoenix began to behave strangely. She would start to bang her head against the wall of her den. We didn't know why. At first, we thought she had a spot she needed to itch, because right after, she would leap against the wall with her back. 2 of my assistants went into her den to try and scratch the spots for her, but were treated with feral behavior. A complete 180 from how she treated them only yesterday. At 6 weeks old, she started to gnaw at her paws to the point they bled, and only bone was showing. This didn't stop her from ramming her head even harder into the wall, her shoulder plates raised as if they weren't fitting inside her body. That would lead to what had happened today. Half an hour before I wrote this, Phoenix had jumped onto her tree she would occasionally nap from and dove onto the ground. She purposely turned around so that her back was the first to make contact with the cement. The back of her head hit the ground and bounced off the ground a few inches in the process. Have you ever accidentally stepped on a cat's tail or paw before? If so, then you would know what that sounds like. Imagine that, but it was mixed with the crunching of bones and flesh ripping as said bones dislocated and were outside the body. We couldn't believe our eyes. What was even more disturbing was the fact that she got back up as if nothing had happened and went back to the top of the tree, just to drop on her back as she had moments ago. We had to sedate her, but it was too late. By the time she was unconscious, we weren't sure if it was from the knockout gas or the shock from the pain of her front leg bones popping out of their socket and her head splitting open. The way she looked, I don't want to describe it, but I have to. Let me make this clear. Her back legs were fine, a little bloody but intact. Her front legs were nothing but blood-soaked skin, like if she was on top of a tiger skin rug that was just freshly cut from the animal while it was still alive. The front leg bones were dark crimson and somehow still intact, as if they could be used normally. As for the back of her head, well, a fragment of her skull was pushed inside, denting it. It was almost certainly pressing on her brain. Why would she do this? It's almost like someone trying to take off a jacket with a broken zipper. The skin that no longer covered her bones was still connected to her body, but it was sagging from her lower neck to her stomach. Some of my assistants couldn't believe their eyes. Some cried. One ran out of the room, throwing up and screaming. Officer Benson was called. Phoenix was rushed to an operating room. We had to somehow get her bones back in her body and stitch up the skin. I'm not confident about the front legs being of any use anymore. More importantly, we need to figure out why she would do such a thing. With the way she was behaving a few weeks ago, we should have known something was wrong. I was about to go into the operating room along with Mike and 3 others, but I was pulled away. 2 guards had stopped me from going in, and one of them held a cell phone and handed it to me. "Officer Benson would like to speak with you, sir." I nodded. "All right. You 2 go inside. Broken bones or not, that animal is still a killing machine. I'll be watching from the observation area." The guards did as I said, shutting the door behind them. The in-use lights turned on outside of the room as I headed to the observation area, dreading the conversation I was about to have. "Benson?" I asked, sweating a little. "Do you want to tell me what the freaking is going on?" Benson's voice was low, with a mixture of anger and annoyance. "I don't know what to tell you, sir. She just started behaving strangely, almost like she was trying to kill herself." The other line was silent. "We recorded odd behavior a few weeks ago, but didn't think much of it until—" "What do you mean, you recorded odd behavior? Are you saying you knew something was wrong and didn't think to inform me?" His voice started to rise with each word. I gulped. "But sir, Phoenix was the first saber-tooth born in the modern age. We knew she was going to have to adjust to an environment her species hadn't experienced before. But we didn't expect something like this would happen," I argued. "Oh, the scientists didn't know it was going to happen. You brought one species back. What's so different about this one?" he asked mockingly. "Well, for starters, her growth was too quick. She went from 1.75 pounds to 770 pounds in over 7 weeks. What kind of animal grows that big that quickly?" I was starting to have enough of this man's attitude. What right did he have to treat me like it was my fault? She was the first one of her species to be de-extinct. A living saber-tooth has never been studied. How were we to know what sort of behavior she would have? Benson was silent, trying to regain his composure. "Listen, Stan, I'm no genius, but I get that there are to be trials and errors. However, my superiors are not too happy about spending so much time and money on a failure. If it were up to me, I would give you another chance. But I can't. You're fired. I'm on my way over." He hung up. "Son of a jerk!" I shouted, and threw the phone, cracking the screen as I stormed into the observation room. I was able to catch the start of the operation, and I pressed the intercom so I could receive play-by-play information. "Mike, have you figured it out yet?" I asked. "Not yet. We just started, but there's a problem." "What now?" "Her bone structure seemed to have gotten a little bigger." "Bigger? What do you mean?" "I mean, it's grown abnormally larger than when we got her x-rays from last week." Could she have been born with acromegaly? It would explain how she grew so quickly since birth. "I'm not sure yet, but it's a possibility. I'm going to cut off a piece of bone to examine after the operation." Mike had finished his preparations for the surgery and looked over to Chris and Jesse, who were assisting him with the operation. "Is the subject secured in the unlikely case she wakes up?" he asked. "She is, Mike, but just in case, we even gave her tranquilizers to knock out an elephant in case of muscle spasms," Chris stated. "We're good to go." Mike turned and gave me a thumbs up, letting me know he was about to start. He grabbed a surgical saw to cut off a small bone fragment from Phoenix's shoulder plate. Sparks flew for a few seconds before he successfully got a small piece of the fragment and gave it to one of the assistants. "Bag it and leave it in my office, please, Jesse." Mike pointed out the door as the assistant nodded and walked out of the door. "Mike, I'll examine the bone fragment in the meantime. Update me if any new information comes up." I got up and was about to have it out. That's when I heard the first scream. I turned around to see that Phoenix's tusks were dug into one of the assistant's shoulders. Phoenix rolled off the operation table and fell flat on her dropping skin rug. The assistant screamed in pain as he was lifted from the ground, still stuck on the animal's tusks. "Chris!" Mike shouted. The guards went in front of the group, pointing their rifles at Phoenix, but they hesitated. They knew how expensive it was to make her, and to put her down would cost them more than what she was worth. I pressed the intercom. "What are you idiots waiting for? Your lives are more important. Just aim away from the tusks when you shoot. You might hit him," I shouted. I then instructed Mike and Jesse to leave the operating room and head to my office as fast as they could. The guards started firing at Phoenix, while all I could do was watch bullets flying through her body, leaving nothing but holes. Phoenix raised her tusks and slammed them on the ground repeatedly until Chris was thrown off. Phoenix turned to the guards, completely unfazed by the bullets, as her hanging skin was shot off. Bullet holes were covering most of her body like a cartoon piece of cheese. One of her eyes was hanging out of her socket, while the other was completely gone, with her skull exposed. "Why the hell isn't she dying?" the guard asked. She got into a stance, much like how a predator prepares itself to take down unsuspecting prey. She leaped at both guards, jumping on top of one as her left tusk made contact with the other guard's face, slamming against his mouth and the chest, fracturing it and breaking off his front teeth and knocking him back. I quickly grabbed my phone and called the rest of the security. "Lock down the observation room. I repeat, lock down the observation room. An asset out of containment," I shouted. "Roger that. Immediately evacuate the area," the security officer on the other line ordered. I hung up the call and was about to do as I was told, but stopped. I couldn't believe my eyes. The assistant that had been skewered by Phoenix's tusks stood up. With wounds like that, I was sure he would have lain there and died. But something was strange. His movements were abnormal. His spine was bent completely backward, but he was walking like nothing had happened, and his head was limp as it dangled around behind him. He felt around his newly formed holes, digging inside as he slowly ripped off flesh, making the holes bigger and exposing his collarbone. As he tore more of his own flesh off, I heard him weep and moan. "Please, kill me. I'm in so much pain, but my body, it's moving on its own. It wants to take off everything. It wants my skeleton to be free. It hurts so much. Please." By this point, his upper torso was nothing more than a skeleton, littered with small, bloody chunks of flesh. I couldn't believe my eyes. But he wasn't the only one. I saw the guard, who previously was knocked backwards, was holding a scalpel, cutting up from where his broken teeth once were, making it to the top of his head, then down to the nape of his neck. He was hyperventilating and repeatedly pleading to whatever urge he had to rip off his skin to stop, as his hands ripped off his flesh. His skull emerged like a butterfly coming out of its cocoon after metamorphosis, leaving his skin by his shoulders like petals of a flower after it bloomed. I threw up. I couldn't handle the gore that was taking place in front of me. It was like being shown a demo of what hell was like. I heard the guard who was pinned down by Phoenix scream as she began to maul him, the walking skeletons wearing meat suits that used to be Chris, and the other guard headed towards the two and knelt over the guard. Upon further inspection, Phoenix wasn't mauling the guard at all. She was tearing his clothes off with help from the others. Why were they doing that? They could easily tear him apart, clothes and all. So why aren't they? Just then, Chris and the other guard held down the pinned guard's arms as he begged them to let him go. The other guard made gurgling sounds, unable to speak anymore. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but I can't control my body. It's like it doesn't belong to me anymore. But I'm still conscious while it moves on its own," Chris said, tears running down his cheeks. He kept repeating for forgiveness as he could do nothing to help the guard, his body, or rather his skeleton, moving against his will. The front of the guard's suit shredded off, along with a nipple and a layer of skin from his stomach. The guard tried his best to free himself from their grasp, but it was pointless. Phoenix had sunk her teeth into his chest with her tusks on both sides of the guard, touching the ground. She would rip off his flesh from under his neck to his groin. The sound her tusks made drowned out the screams of the guard. It was a horrible, ear-wrenching sound, like nails scratching down a chalkboard. The guard's complete upper skeletal structure was exposed. He could do nothing but shake rapidly and cry. Phoenix lowered her head, her paw bone touching the guard's rib cage. He shook more than he stopped. The things that were once people let him go, and all three rose from the ground. They all faced the door and, like a newborn taking its first steps, made for the exit of the room and headed down the hallway, with Phoenix a few steps behind them. I headed towards my office, taking my phone out and calling Mike. Jesse answered. "Hello? Stan? Jesse, where are you and Mike right now?" "We just got inside your office. Can you tell me what—" Suddenly, the sound of a siren was set off. The lockdown finally started as red lights lit the entire inside of the facility. "Jesse, I need you and Mike to examine the bone fragment right now. I'm on my way." "But what's happening?" "I can't explain it, but Phoenix seems to have some kind of virus. She infected Chris and the guards."
Wait, Chris, but those wounds were fatal.
I know. Whatever it is that's infected him seems to be keeping him alive, but not in control of his movements. He started ripping off his own skin to expose his bones. The same happened with the guards, and now they're roaming free in the facility. For a second, Jessie was silent. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Just examine the bone. I'll be there in a few minutes." As soon as I hung up the call, I heard gunshots followed by shouting. I turned around the corner to the hallway leading to the operating room. I wish I hadn't. What transpired was nothing short of a massacre. The security team had been wasting bullets as they shot at the moving corpses. The more they were fired at, the more flesh and organs came off of them, to the point they looked like skeletons wearing pants made of meat and dangling skin. The living skeletons had begged for the security to run away. They knew being shot wouldn't kill them, so the only thing they could do was warn. The living skeletons relentlessly made their way to the first wave of guards, tossing away their guns or pushing them upwards so that they would fire at the guards instead, the bullets shooting at their chins and out of the top of their heads. The shootings would have been instant if the skeletons hadn't buried their fingers into the holes and ripped off the guards' faces. I think whatever was left of the skeletons' minds finally broke as they began to laugh insanely. With the mix of their laughter and the painful crying of the security guards, it was like listening to a symphony made for the devil. It was chilling, but I realized something. Where was Phoenix? My question was immediately answered as drops of blood and concrete fell from the ceiling. When I looked up, my eyes widened. She was on the ceiling, her eyes set on me as she dug her exposed phalanges, her toe bones, and her back legs into the ceiling and started to crawl to me at a quick pace, like a rock climber making their way up a cliff face. The strength in her bones kept her from falling as she began to chase me. I turned to run as her pace grew quicker. There was no way I was going to outrun her, but because she was chasing me from a bizarre angle, I could confuse her. I ran as fast as I possibly could, making a sharp turn at the next corner and running in a serpentine style. I didn't look back to see if it worked, but I did see an elevator. I think she was gaining on me. I had to hurry. I threw myself inside the elevator and pressed the button that would lead to the third floor where my office was located. It felt like the door was taking hours to close, as I could do nothing but watch Phoenix approach closer. She jumped down from the ceiling and leaped to get me. Luckily, the elevator door shut, and a large dent was made as Phoenix slammed against the elevator, unsuccessful in her hunt. I could finally catch my breath and slid down to the floor. I didn't notice until now, but I was sweating all over. I hoped that I'd have enough energy to run away from those things the next time I encountered them, but I prayed there wouldn't be a next time. I felt the elevator shake and bumped my head. What just happened? The power didn't go out, did it? But the elevator was still moving. I then felt a thud against the floor and froze, as there was no way the saber-toothed tiger could have fit in the elevator shaft. But I was wrong. Sharp, dagger-like claws poked through the floor, narrowly missing my foot. I quickly moved and pressed my back against the elevator door. Phoenix was riding under the elevator and shot her claws into the floor, shredding it as she dragged her claws. For a second they retracted, only for her tusks to appear instead, making a large hole in the ground. I could see the look of a hunter in her eye. Just how relentless was this virus? Just then, the elevator dinged, and the dented door struggled to open as Phoenix got closer to forming her own way inside. As soon as the door opened, I jumped out. I was about to run when I paused. Everyone had evacuated to the third floor. "Professor Stanley, what's going on?" an assistant asked. But the only thing I could do was to shout for everyone to run. As Phoenix finally made her way through, barely fitting into the elevator and ramming against the elevator door until it broke off, everyone in the room began to panic as they tried to save themselves and leave the area.
Phoenix lost her focus on making and instead attacked whoever she could get her paws on. I ran towards my office as she took down 3 scientists, stomping on their chests and crushing their bones. Even crushed, they began to slowly get up, tearing each other's flesh off however they could, and helping their new skeletal ally. The screams became distant as I entered my office door, slamming it shut and locking it. I tried to catch my breath, but was suddenly punched in the jaw. "You god-darn bastard!" Mike shouted as he grabbed me by the collar. "You said you got rid of the bacteria in that tusk. What the hell did you do?" I looked at him, then at Jessie. She turned her head away as Mike continued to pound my face in. "There was nothing I could do. Benson threatened to find someone else for this project and—" Suddenly Mike had grabbed my mouth shut and kneed me in the gut. "So that gave you the excuse to just ignore whatever this bacteria was. Did you even think about the consequences that would come from this?" Mike let go of me and walked off to the microscope. "Get over here, now." I got up and headed my way, Jessie never looking in my direction at all. "What?"
I asked. Take a look at this. Mike pointed at the bone fragment. I took a look into the microscope and couldn't believe my eyes. There were microscopic, tick-like parasites all over the bone. I was speechless. They're some kind of parasites that are only attracted to bones. Luckily, it's only bone-to-bone contact. No way for them to get inside you by touching your skin. I turned to him quickly and looked confused. Jessie accidentally dropped it on her hands, opening the bag. Without any gloves on. Yeah, I know. But at least we know they can't dig under your skin to get to your skeleton. Jessie walked over to us. Where did these things even come from? There's been no discovery of such a creature ever documented before. I thought about it for a few minutes, and Mike checked the monitors, seeing the massacre that took place all over the facility. I think I know what. Mike and Jessie looked over at me. When the asteroids killed the dinosaurs, it caused a global impact, causing volcanoes to erupt, oceans to rise, even dust clouds that blocked out the sun. I continued to examine the parasites as I explained my theory. The time frame between the Cretaceous period and the Ice Age is too big a gap. But what if there was another meteorite? One that caused a different kind of extinction? Jessie and Mike stood in silence for a moment. So what? You're saying these things came from space? Yes, and they're confirmation that alien life does exist on other planets. All right. Then why are they only here now when we brought Phoenix back to life? Why aren't there any other ones besides the ones in this facility? Because they died. They must not be able to survive in low temperatures, which would explain why they came back along with Phoenix. Well, we're screwed then. Mike kicked my desk chair. It's the middle of July, and there's nothing cold in this facility besides the environmental room. But that wouldn't fill the whole facility with cold air. How would we kill those things? I have an idea. We can use these. I go to the corner of the room, grabbing the fire extinguisher that was placed for emergency use. It's not cold enough to kill, but we can modify it if we can get to the environmental room. There should be machines there we can disassemble and create a flamethrower that freezes, I explained. All right. All right. But just one fire extinguisher isn't going to be enough. It'll run out quickly, too. There's another one to the side of my fridge. Jessie, Mike, and I will cover you with the extinguisher's foam. It'll lower your body temperature, but keep you safe from the parasites. Mike, we'll all head for the environmental room while protecting Jessie. And don't worry about wasting any of the extinguisher's foam. If I remember right, there are 5 more in the room. Mike nodded and grabbed the other fire extinguisher. We were getting ready to cover Jessie up, but were startled as we heard a loud bang. Was that an explosion? What the hell is happening? Jessie screamed. Mike and I quickly covered Jessie with the extinguisher's foam and prepared to leave my office. I opened the door and looked both ways to make sure the coast was clear. All right, let's move, I said.
We headed for the stairway as stealthily as possible. Luckily, we didn't see any of the living corpses and headed downstairs. As we made our way to the first floor, we were hit with a strong smell of smoke and burnt flesh as we opened the door. There were dozens of flaming skeletons, their flesh dripping off with the heat like meat falling off a well-cooked steak. The only noise heard was the roar of flames and a mixture of crackling bones, insane laughter, and painful wails. Crap! The heat is already melting the foam. We're going to have to make a run for it, Mike whispered, already prepared to sprint off. I grabbed his shoulder before he could make that regrettable decision. Wait, we can't draw attention or they'll all come after us. We need a diversion. Doesn't the corridor make a full circle here? I can get their attention and have them chase me while you two make your way to the environmental room. Then, I'll block the entrances to both corridors. I mean, that could work, but what if there's more of them in the corridors? Jesse asked. Easy. I'll cover myself in the extinguisher's foam. They won't want to touch me, and if there are some in front of me, I'll just foam them too. Mike, it'll be dangerous, I said. It's the only way you two can safely make it to the environmental room. Besides, it won't take me long to catch up to you guys. Without a second thought, Mike covered himself up till he looked like a frothy snowman. Hey, you cemetery freeloaders, over here! Mike ran towards the corridor, and they took the bait. Jesse and I waited till the room was cleared before we headed towards the environmental room. As the door closed behind us, we heard a roar. Crap, where's Phoenix? I asked. I think she's following Mike. Oh God, we need to help him. We can't. He's risking his life for us to get this chance. We can't let it go to waste, Jesse. I was slapped. I hope you know that if they get him, that'll be another victim in this parasitic army that you caused. Yeah, I know. My cheek stung, but it was nothing compared to the pain of my careless actions. We entered the environmental room and found the fire extinguishers. We took apart machinery and unfinished projects. Before we even finished one freeze thrower, the fire alarms went off, and with them, the sprinklers. The sprinklers had washed off the foam covering Jesse. We both looked at each other, horrified. We need to get Mike, now, Jesse shouted. I'll go. You keep making freeze throwers. I ran out of the room. I hadn't even tested the weapon yet, but for once in my life, I prayed it would work. I headed to the opposite corridor, which would be faster than chasing him the way he went. The roar of skeletons was slowly coming into hearing range, and with it, I saw Mike approach. My eyes widened. A skeleton had rode Mike's shoulder as it tore off his scalp with its teeth. The foam was completely washed off. Mike! I aimed my freeze thrower at him and the skeleton and fired. They both came to a complete stop. I lowered my weapon and approached Mike. Mike, I'm so sorry. I teared up. This was my fault. The many lives of everyone in this facility now belong to those parasites, all because I ignored the warnings when I brought Phoenix. I should have taken my time to get rid of the bacteria, no matter what Benson threatened with. I ran back towards the environmental room. The skeletons hadn't seen me yet, so I was safe from being followed. I ran into the room, horrified by what I had seen. Jessie was frozen, and next to her was a stomped head. It could barely move as it gurgled. She had an open wound on her hand, revealing her fingers. I dropped to the ground and screamed. As far as I was aware, I was the only one left. I had to stop the parasites before any of them got out. As the water from the sprinklers rained down on me, I came to a realization. The sprinkler system. I can rewire the sprinkler system to release the water pressure at a freezing temperature. I didn't waste a second longer as I got up and made my way to where the sprinkler system was located. Skeletons approached me as I raised my freeze thrower and froze them in place, but it wasn't going to hold them off long. I headed up the stairs to the second floor. Not long after, I heard the stomping of a large creature. Phoenix was coming. I saw her silhouette from the bottom of the stairs approaching, but I was already about to enter the second floor. After a minute of turning corners, I finally made it. I know there is no way for me to be redeemed after what I've done. I wasn't asking for forgiveness. I just wanted this whole mess to be over. Before I entered the room where I could rewire the sprinkler system, I froze. To my left was Phoenix. That's impossible. You were behind me in the staircase. I spoke too soon as I heard another roar come from behind me. I turned to see the liger. The skeletons must have broken into her den and infected her. I wasted no time as they ran towards me, slamming the door in their faces and locking it. It wasn't going to hold for long. I had to be quick. I tore open the system panel and got to work. Each second felt stressful as Phoenix and the Liger rammed themselves in the door. Each time they bashed themselves against the door, it made a dent not just to the door, but to the wall, too. Luckily, I had finished just as they busted their way inside the room. I pulled the switch as Phoenix pounced on me, clawing my face off as freezing water rained down on us. I did it. I stopped the parasites. It's kind of poetic, in a way. My life was taken away by the very thing I brought back from the dead. I smiled. As I finish typing, I feel my time running out. I pray that they never get out, that they remain here, frozen, along with the rest of us. I turned my head to see Phoenix and the Liger completely frozen in place, along with the parasites that controlled their body. I shut my eyes as I joined them in eternal sleep, just as the animals of the Ice Age had done all those centuries ago. Up next. Arjun's reflection smiled at me, even though he wasn't smiling at all. It moved a little too slow or made the wrong expressions. The smile stretched too wide or eyebrows furrowed when Arjun's clearly weren't. Every now and then I'd see him glaring at me out of the corner of my eye, but when I looked at him directly, all I saw was the shaggy mess of black hair on the back of his head. I dismissed it until last week when I drove to his house to return some work papers he'd forgotten. No one answered the knock, but to my surprise, the door was unlocked. I let myself in. The house was silent. All of Arjun's clothes were still in the closet next to the rucksack he always takes when we go backpacking. I reached the kitchen door and stopped. I heard a noise from inside, a sound like a cat coughing up a hairball. I twisted the knob and the door swung open. Yellow-orange light spilled out of the open basement, illuminating the kitchen in a dingy glow. A horrific hacking sound echoed from below, wet and visceral. Whatever was in the basement retched again, followed by a wet thudding, like it was puking up chunks of something. But that wasn't the worst part. Then it spoke. It was a harsh, raspy voice. "Freaking those bastards," it rasped. "I hope they burn." The creature's labored breath and lung-rending coughs reverberated off the walls. Then, something at the bottom of the stairs drew my attention. A long, clawed hand, bruised black and green like decay, dripping with a clear, snot-like gel that glistened in the light. It scraped at the ground, nails digging into the grooves of the cement. As more of the arm appeared, coated in slippery goo, I realized it was trying to pull itself forward. I ran. I have never run so fast in my life. Arjun started texting me an hour later. "Hey, what is up? I think I left some work papers at your place." He called again and again until I blocked his number. He even came by my house, but I kept the curtains shut. There is one thing I cannot get out of my head. When that creature spoke in that raspy, inhuman voice, underneath it all, I heard Arjun. Same tone, same cadence. I am struggling to accept that what I witnessed is real. How am I supposed to accept that my best friend is a monster? Up next, I always thought my roommate was the strange one, until I saw him pointing at me from the back of an ambulance. When I first introduced myself, he was so startled he nearly fell out of his chair.
I chuckled and tried to apologize, but he promptly stood up and left. Later, I found him watching TV and asked how his day was. He turned the volume up so loud the sound came out distorted. He ignored me completely after that. One time, I tapped him on the shoulder, just trying to get past, and he practically jumped out of his skin before running to his room and slamming the door. I could hear the sound of something heavy being dragged over the floorboards. To be honest, he was the worst roommate. He rarely cleaned. Dishes were always piled in the sink, and he had plastered over the windows with old newspapers. He had even taken all the mirrors down. There wasn't even a single piece of shiny cutlery to catch a reflection. Everything was plastic. When I tried to peel some of the newspaper off a window once, he screamed at me until I backed away. I mostly kept to myself after that, but he never stayed in the same room as me for long. I tried announcing where I was going to avoid startling him, but that only made things worse. But that wasn't the worst part. He started whispering in a rhythmic chant I could never quite make out. Then, everything changed. There was a loud bang at the front door. It burst open, followed by the sound of multiple footsteps. A woman's voice floated up the stairs, followed by another bang and the sound of my roommate sobbing. They were taking him away. I ran to the window, tore off the newspaper, and saw him being bundled into an ambulance. Neighbors were looking on with their heads hung low. His last act before being driven away was pointing directly at me. A medic turned to look, but they just shook off a chill and returned their attention to my roommate. No one came back for me. I've been alone for 3 days now. I finally went into his room to find the truth. The floorboards had grooves worn into them from the doorway to his dresser. The room was a mess of newspapers and moldy takeout containers. On his desk, a laptop sat open. I scanned the notes on his corkboard, and my fingers instinctively typed the password. 020226. His search history was full of topics like seeing things, unwanted spirits, and exorcisms. I found his journal next. In March, he wrote about hearing the smell of burning oil and rubber, wishing he had them back. By April, he claimed he saw something watching him. He wrote that I touched him, calling me a bastard and saying he had to barricade the door. He wrote that he saw her nose and his wide eyes in my face. The last entry was just the phrase, "I'll be okay," repeated hundreds of times. I powered down the laptop. As the screen went black, I saw my reflection for the first time. I saw a pair of wide, misaligned, innocent eyes. I tilted my head, and the reflection followed. On the corkboard, a news clipping from February 2nd, 2026 showed a fatal crash on Interstate 95. Elias was the sole survivor. The pictures of the woman and the boy who died, I recognized those faces. I wonder when Elias is coming back. Does anyone know where they take people who scream a lot? I want to say I'm sorry. I need him back. I can't remember ever feeling hungry before he left. Up next, my girlfriend suggested a hike to Lake Effenligger, but a quick search showed the only one is in Norway, and we live in Colorado. I was out for coffee with my girlfriend at a cozy cafe on the main street of our quaint mountain town. It was a normal day in late autumn, when the leaves start to tan and the air gets that biting afterburn that makes hot coffee hit just right. As I picked up my cup mid-sentence, I saw them, little red threads stuck to my fingertips. My girlfriend picked up on my quizzical squint and asked if I was okay. "Yeah," I said. "I just have some red string on me." She asked where they might have come from, and I told her the truth. I had absolutely no idea. I hadn't touched anything red. The furniture was treated iron, and the cup was white. My clothes were blue jeans and a black t-shirt. Puzzled, but unconcerned, I wiped the strands off. They fell away easily and continued my day. But when we got home that night, shopping bags in hand, I noticed they had returned. I set our groceries down in the kitchen and stared at my fingers like they were misbehaving. Again, she noticed. "You probably have something in your pockets," she suggested. I emptied them out. Wallet, phone, keys, and a lint ball, but nothing that could produce red strings. We shrugged it off and climbed into bed, but the mystery was becoming physical. As we cuddled, I couldn't focus on the TV. I stared blankly at the wall, thinking about the fibers. My girlfriend, who can practically read my mind, squeezed me and muttered sleepily, "Maybe you're just coming apart at the seams." She likes to joke, but that comment felt weird. As an anxious person, I chalked it up to overthinking and settled into sleep.
That night was rough. I dreamt a red thread leaked from my right palm, spooling out into a dark void. It didn't hurt. I just remember unwinding, little by little, until everything I was had been pulled out along that thread. I felt strange waking up. The threads were back, stuck to my fingertips and my palms. A pang of eerie discomfort stabbed at me. I stumbled to the bathroom to wash them off, and again they came off with ease. At breakfast, she could tell something was wrong from my posture. She took my hand and said, "There is a trail we haven't taken up the mountains yet. I hear it goes to a small lake. Want to go? It might make you feel better." As I let go of her hand, I noticed red threads from my palm had rubbed off onto her. She wiped them off and gave me a beautiful, toothy smile as if it didn't matter. I asked when she wanted to go. "Whenever, just let me know," she responded, sweet as a songbird, before fluttering away. I typed my symptoms into Google, but the results produced nothing of relevance. When I entered the living room, my girlfriend was waiting with a giddy, eager smile, wider than usual. "You're that excited to go hiking?" I asked. She chirped, "I'm just really excited to show you this place. It will help take your mind off things." I asked when she had been there before, and she just shrugged. "Oh, a while ago." I told her I needed air. On the way out, I asked for the name of the lake. She told me the odd Nordic name, Lake Effenliger. When I asked where it was, she dodged. "It's a little trail outside of town." Usually quiet and demure, she was now radiating an energetic glee I had never seen. I searched for the lake on my phone, brushing ever-multiplying crimson fibers from my sticky palms. My reality was unraveling, and she seemed to be enjoying it. Before the search loaded, I noticed the threads creeping up my arms. I panicked and shook them off as my heart raced. I punched the name into my phone. Lake Effenliger. The only result was a lake in Norway. We live in Colorado. There was no Lake Effenliger here. I returned home in the afternoon to find her getting our hiking gear ready. Everything was already in the car. I told her it was too late to go, but she gave me an inky, animalistic look. "No, I think it's the perfect time. Come on, I'll show you. I was stunned. I felt that no would not be an adequate answer. I quietly sat in the passenger's seat as we departed. The fibers were becoming intolerable, replenishing within minutes and crawling out of my skin like ants. "Don't do that," she said, giving me a wry, owl-like stare. She knew something I didn't. As we drove past the edge of town, I realized it was too late to ask. The trail was off an old dirt back road. She parked and turned to me with the biggest, hungriest smile I had ever seen. "What is this?" I stammered. "We're going hiking, silly," she said in a golden voice. She scuttled out of the car, dropped into an all-fours stance, and dug her fingers into the dirt before standing tall. "You are freaking me out," I snapped. Usually that would make her cry, but she just smiled and smiled. "Grab your hiking pole, silly," she said, dancing away. I told her I was going home and needed a doctor. Her dancing stopped. She spun on one leg with a starving smirk. "You always say something like that. It never works." I felt ice in my veins. I rushed to the driver's side and punched the ignition. The car sat silent. "See?" she said, leaning in. I was sweating red threads now. My breathing was shaky. "We'll go home soon," she said, reading my mind. "But first, we should go see the lake." I let out a pathetic, fearful whimper. She was leaning so close I could hear her heartbeat. Both of them. "You promise we'll go home?" I asked. She leaned in and licked a tear from my face. "As always, if you come with me, I promise." She wasn't my girlfriend anymore. She was a predator, and I was prey. She pulled me into the forest as night fell. Her grip was iron. It took 15 minutes to reach the lake. It was small, black, and felt profoundly wrong. There was no wind, no birds, only us and the threads falling off me like red snow. 2 runic headstones sat at the water's edge. "What are these?" I whispered. "These are for you," she said. "It's part of the deal you made the day you died, silly. You wanted to live forever, like me. Your thread is mine." She grabbed my hand. A red thread was growing from my palm like a hair. She pinched it and began to pull. It came out like sinew, hot and stringy. As it unspooled, I felt hollow and weightless. My heart stopped. She danced around the lake, the thread weaving into massive deer antlers that had grown from her head. She pulled until I collapsed, staring at the moon. Everything blackened. The last thing I saw was her standing over me, her antlers framing the moon perfectly. I wondered if I had seen this before. I woke up in my own bed the next morning. My girlfriend slept beside me, unhorned and peaceful. She woke up with a normal smile. "Babe, you okay?" I lied and said I just had weird dreams. I know that lake was real. I'm scared of her, but I'm tied to her in ways I don't understand. That night, I dreamt of the lake again. There were 3 headstones now, the old one, the second one, and a new one. I searched the meaning of Affinliger. It means everlasting, eternal.